Hey YouTube, we're making homemade cinnamon rolls. This is my own personal recipe that I've adjusted. They really turn out really nice. The rolls are light and fluffy and don't taste packy. What we're going to need for dry ingredients is 4 cups of flour, 1/3 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 4 tablespoons of non-fat dry milk, and 2 tablespoons of bread conditioner. You'll incorporate all those ingredients together. Then we're going to take a cup of milk and we're going to heat it to up to 100 to 110 degrees. After you've heated your milk to 100 and 110, you're going to add a tablespoon of sugar and 2 teaspoons of bread yeast. Just what you would use in a bread maker is fine. You'll take a spoon and mix it real well together, or take a little whisk and whisk it together. You want to make sure that it's active. So after you've done that, you're going to need 2 eggs, 1/4 of a cup of safflower oil or butter, or you could use vegetable oil, and we're going to need a little bit more water, approximately around between 1/4 to 1/2 cup. Because bread is not weighed and measured, it can be more or less, so it's not exact unless you measure it. So we're going to put our eggs in and our butter or oil in. Then we're going to add our milk that has the yeast and there's a little bit of sugar in it. You put the sugar in it because the yeast actually feeds off the sugar. We're going to add about probably a little bit more water, probably 1/4 of a cup. And you want the dough to be wet, not firm. And the way that I check it is I allow the mixer to knead the bread dough for me for 4 to 5 minutes. See how the dough is spread out all over the pan on the inside? That lets you know that the bread is wet enough, and because if you don't get it wet enough, it can be dry. Your cinnamon rolls can taste dry. So you want to have a wet dough, and this way your cinnamon rolls will stay moist. You'll put it on a floured surface. I use this cutting board that is used for nothing but pastries and bread. No meat ever touches it. Just put a little flour on it and take your hands and form the dough into a ball. Like I said, put a liberal amount of flour on it. It'll be easy to roll out. And today I'm using a pastry roller to roll the dough out. I think it's easier than a rolling pin because you can turn the dough and just keep spreading it out really easy instead of having to stop and take both hands on a big old rolling pin. You can get these on Amazon for around $5 or less. They're really cheap. One thing I do is I do not submerge it in water. I clean it with a cloth, and like I said, I don't drop it down in the water. It's lasted me, I've had it probably 5 years or so. After we get the bread dough spread out, we're going to try to get it spread out as to where it almost covers this whole rectangle on the cutting board. This cutting board is probably 16 to 18 inches by 24 approximately. So we're going to try to spread that out as much as we can. It just makes a nicer cinnamon roll. It's going to taste better because it has more layers. Once you get your dough spread out, you're going to take a 1/4 cup of butter melted and spread it out evenly over the dough. Try to brush it as close to the edges as you can. You want everything on this dough to be evenly spread out, because if it's not, you're going to have a cinnamon roll that doesn't taste like the other ones do. It won't taste as sweet, or might not have as much cinnamon. So you try to do things as evenly as possible on the dough. I just took my hand and took some brown sugar and evenly spread it out. It's approximately a little bit under 1/2 cup to maybe more than 1/2 cup. It's not a whole lot. It's just a thin layer of brown sugar. I'm using 2 types of cinnamon. One is a Ceylon cinnamon, the other one is McCormick's. It has a little bit different taste, so I like to use a combination of the two. It kind of enhances each other's flavors. The Ceylon is really my favorite, so if you have a choice of one to buy the Ceylon cinnamon. It's the real deal. It's really good for you also. It has a lot of benefits to your stomach actually. If you were going to add raisins or pecans, you would do it at this time. Probably a 1/4 cup of each, if you were adding them, would be enough. After I get the Ceylon cinnamon put out on the brown sugar, I'm going to take my hand and rub it around. That way we get it closer to the edges, and also know that it's evenly spread out and we don't have any clumps of sugar in any one spot. After this, we're going to start rolling this into a log so we can cut the rolls and add them to our pan to rise. We're going to start from the long side by folding over the edge, and then we'll just keep rolling it slowly until we get a log. If your dough by chance would be stuck to the bottom if you didn't add enough flour, just take, I'm using a pastry cutter today. You could take that pastry cutter or a spatula and slide under that dough and fold it over to keep it from making a hole in your dough if it does stick to the surface that you're using. You just keep rolling this until you get it completely rolled up, and we're going to cut it into approximately 1-inch chunks. You're going to need 2 pans. I used some throwaway pans that I had today because some of these are going to the neighbors, so I didn't want them to have to worry about washing a pan and bringing it back. You get approximately about 18 1-inch cinnamon rolls out of this. And we'll put them in the pan that has been greased, and they will probably triple or quadruple in size. This is the pastry cutter that I'm using. When you cut the cinnamon roll, you're going to actually put the cut side down on the pan that's been sprayed with Pam or Baker's Joy. That way you don't have any cinnamon sugar falling out the bottom. It kind of crimps it off and keeps all of your ingredients on the inside of your cinnamon roll. What I did was I just took my cutter and made sure I was going to have at least 18 and went ahead and marked them off. And you can do the same to make sure you have enough to evenly have 2 pans. See, I'm putting the cut surface down on the bottom of the pan. We're going to put about 9 rolls in each pan. Also preheated my oven to about 200. Then I cracked the door and let some of the heat escape. So it had a little bit of a warm surface. Warm area for the rolls to rise. They'll rise a little bit better, a little bit faster. You don't want it hot, you just want it warm, say around 125, 130 degrees. So just let it stay on for 2 or 3 minutes, cut it off, crack the door so any extra heat can escape, and then you're going to let them rise for around 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Once you get them all cut, you'll place them, like I said, in a warm area to rise for 1.5 hours. And after they've risen, you're going to put your oven on 350 degrees and let it preheat. You want to take the rolls out of the oven if you've got them in the oven to rise. You see the size of these cinnamon rolls, and you're fixing to see what they rose to. See how much they rose in 1.5 hours. Those are some big cinnamon rolls. When your oven's got up to 350 degrees, when you put them in, be sure to set your timer. 12, 13, 14 minutes is tops on these cinnamon rolls. If you over bake them, it will dry them out. It will make them taste hard and crusty. You don't want to over bake them. So make sure your oven is totally preheated to 350 before you put them in there. Don't turn the oven on and stick them in there because they won't bake just right. Now our oven's at 350, we're going to put them in and we're going to set our timer for 13 minutes. Let that last. When it gets to about 12 minutes, I'm going to start checking it and making sure that they're not overly brown. To know that you've got them brown enough, as you'll see just in places where they're a little bit brown, like they're just starting to brown, when they do that, that is enough. You don't want to bake them any longer. Okay, to make the icing, you're going to need 3 tablespoons of butter, 2 cups of confectioner's sugar, tablespoon of vanilla, and some milk. You'll mix your butter, or just throw everything in there and mix it all together, and then you'll just start adding your milk like a tablespoon at a time until you get it to the consistency of where you could pour it out of this Pyrex measuring bowl. Okay, these are the cinnamon rolls after they bake 13 minutes. As you can see, they're just barely brown in places. They're not golden brown all over. That's the way you want them. Then we'll ice them down while they're hot. You don't wait till they're cool. You go ahead and ice them while they're hot. I didn't ice all of mine. I left a couple of them uniced. We just wanted to try them without any icing on them. I'm not too real big on the sweet thing. These are from my little neighbor across the street. So I loaded his with sugars, but the one for us, I just barely put any icing on them at all. Really simple to make. If you have any questions, ask us in the comments. We'll answer all questions. If you haven't joined our channel, do so, and you'll get notifications as we add new videos. This is the Pressured Prepper. Hope you have a great day. I'm out of here.